creatine monohydrate. It's got to be one of the most popular supplements out there, right? But it's also maybe one of the most misunderstood. So today, we're going to dig into the research and get the real story.
All right, let's get right into it. I mean, you've seen this stuff everywhere, haven't you? Tubs just like this one, in health stores, at the gym, probably in your buddy's kitchen cabinet. It is everywhere. But seriously, beyond all the hype, what is this white powder actually doing inside your body?
So, what's the deal? Is it some magic performance booster? Is it actually a health risk? Or is there something more going on here that most of us are missing? These are the big questions we're going to tackle. Let's find out together. Okay, first things first. Before we jump into the benefits and the myths, we gotta understand what we're even talking about. So let's unpack this white powder.
Right. So the number one thing to get your head around is that creatine is not some weird lab-made chemical. It's actually a substance your own body makes all on its own from amino acids, the basic building blocks of protein.
And get this, your body doesn't just make it, it's already storing a pretty big chunk of it, like 120 grams for the average person. Plus, you're getting it from food too, whenever you eat stuff like beef or salmon. So when you supplement, you're not really adding something new. You're just topping off a tank that's already there.
All right, so we know what it is. It's natural. But how does it actually work? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like this. It's your body's own personal superfast energy recharger. The whole process is actually pretty cool and surprisingly simple. So picture this. When you do something really intense, like a heavy lift or a full-out sprint, your muscles use this molecule called ATP. That's the battery, fully charged. But when you use that power, the battery drains, and that ATP turns into a powerless version called ADP. Now this is where creatine becomes the hero of the story. It swoops in like a portable power bank and slaps a charge right back onto that ADP, turning it back into high-energy ATP. Boom, instant power. And that's exactly why it helps with those short explosive bursts. It gives your muscles more power right when they need it.
So that's the theory. And it sounds great, right? But does it actually work in the real world? Let's see what the research has to say.
And you know what? The science is super clear here. For anything that needs those short, intense bursts of power, we're talking weightlifting, sprinting, sports like football, the evidence is rock solid. It absolutely helps. But when you look at endurance stuff, like long-distance running or swimming, the results are kind of meh. The science just isn't there. But wait, the story doesn't end at the gym. Not even close. In fact, this is where things get really, really interesting. Scientists are now looking at a whole bunch of other uses for it. We're talking about things like possibly reducing cholesterol, helping with wasting syndromes, and even showing some real promise for serious neuromuscular diseases like MS and Parkinson's. I mean, this could completely change the game for how we think about this stuff.
Okay, you know how it is. Anything that's popular is going to have a ton of myths and just plain wrong information floating around. So let's get into it. Time to bust some myths and separate the science from the speculation.
First up, the big one. I'm sure you've heard of this. The loading phase. You know, the idea that you have to take these huge doses for the first week to load up your muscles? So, do you really have to do that?
Well, let's just go straight to the source. There's this key study from way back in 1996, and it basically says that while loading gets you there faster, just taking a small dose like 3 grams a day is, and I'm quoting here, in the long term, likely to be as effective. So the science itself is telling us that loading might not be necessary.
So what's the bottom line? You can probably just skip the loading phase. Taking a simple 3 to 5 grams a day will get you to the exact same spot in about a month. And the big bonus? You'll most likely skip the stomach problems a lot of people get from those giant loading doses.
All right, let's tackle the scariest myth out there, the one that really makes people nervous. Does creatine damage your kidneys?
So, let's be super clear about this. Based on tons and tons of research, the answer is a straight-up no. For people who are already healthy, study after study shows it's safe and doesn't cause kidney problems, period.
So you're probably wondering, well, where did this myth even come from? And it's actually a classic case of a simple misunderstanding. Here's what happens. Taking creatine raises the levels of a waste product in your blood called creatinine. Now, doctors use high creatinine levels as a flag for potential kidney issues. But, and this is the key part, when you're taking creatine, that spike is just a normal, harmless byproduct. It's not a sign of damage. It's just a sign that you're taking creatine. It's confusing an indicator for the actual problem.
Okay, last big question. You walk into a store and it's overwhelming, right? There are like a dozen different kinds of creatine on the shelf. So which one is the real MVP? Let's figure it out.
And honestly, the difference is night and day. On one side, you have plain old creatine monohydrate. It has the most research by far, it's proven to be safe and effective, and it's cheap. Then on the other side, you have all these fancy, new and improved versions that claim to be way better. But here's the kicker. When you actually go looking for the science to back up those claims, it's just not there. You're paying more for fancy marketing, not for a better product.
Which brings us all the way back to the beginning, doesn't it? When you look at all the evidence, how effective it is, how safe it is, and the great value, the verdict is crystal clear. The source gives a big, enthusiastic thumbs up to the original creatine monohydrate.
So there you have it. We've gone through the science, we busted the biggest myths, and we've landed on a pretty clear verdict. Which kind of leaves you with one last thought, doesn't it? After all this time, after hundreds and hundreds of studies, is it possible that one of the most researched supplements on the planet is still one of the most misunderstood?